here on NBC.
First up, it's baseball on NBC, and today you'll see the San Diego Padres in a rematch of last year's National League Championship Series take on the Chicago Cubs. Or the Cubs' rivals in the National League East, the New York Mets, against Pete Rose in pursuit of Ty Cobb's record and the young Cincinnati Reds. Then after baseball, NBC's Golf Tour 85 continues with golf's greatest names in the Tournament of Champions. Tom Watson defends his title live from Costas. But up first, NBC Sports presents Major League Baseball. An inside look at baseball and a preview of today's game of the week. Brought to you by Light Beer from Miller. Everything you've always wanted in a beer and less. And by Honda Motorcycles. Honda, follow the leader.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bill McAtee here in our NBC Sports studios in New York, and we want to get quickly to a story that has broken this morning. The San Diego Union reported today that Alan Wiggins, the second baseman for the San Diego Padres, who has entered a drug rehabilitation facility, will not play again for the Padres this year. The team thus far has refused comment, but Padres club president Ballard Smith has called a press conference for 6 o'clock Eastern time to discuss the situation. Now, yesterday, for the first time since the National League playoffs last year, the Padres played the Cubs. San Diego won by a score of 6-5. Padres scored 3 runs in the first, 2 coming here on this triple into the gap in right center. Tim Flannery and Tony Gwynn score. Craig Nettles and Gary Templeton both homered for the Padres later on. They win 6-5. Rick Sutcliffe was the loser. His first loss at Wrigley Field, Sutcliffe 3-3. And the Twins had their winning streak snapped last night. The Twins had won 10 straight, but with the score tied in the 8th against Baltimore, Cal Ripken hit his 4th home run of the year. A 2-run shot. That stood up. The Orioles beat the Twins by a score of 8-7. Well, the pressures created by victory. We'll talk of that and take a lyrical look at the Yankee managers. That and a few surprises when we come back to New York in a moment. All right, back now in New York. Some of you today will get a chance to see the 2 defending divisional champions in the National League, the Cubs and the Padres. Both teams this year facing the challenge of the fighter who has the heart to be champion. Now must find out if he has the heart to stay champion. Here's Lynn Berman.
The 5th game of the 1984 National League Championship Series. It was the bursting of the Cubs bubble. They led the Padres 2-0 and let it slip away. They lost 3 straight, the 3rd after leading with their ace Rick Sutcliffe on the mound. For the Cubs, it was devastating.
As the offseason wore on, did you think about the game? Did you think about specific plays? You did, huh?
Sure, you can't get away from it. I mean, in this business, you think about things like that. The importance of winning a National League pennant and getting in a World Series with a chance to win the World Championship that's what we're all after, and then you can't just walk away from a thing like that and forget about it.
So while the team thought about losing during the offseason, their fans thought about winning. And next year, Mania is alive and well here in Chicago.
For the first time, we had lines of people waiting to buy season tickets, where in the past there was always a base of maybe 3,000 to 6,000 season tickets for the whole year. But we had 3,000 or 6,000 people waiting outside some cold December morning waiting for the gates to open so they could purchase their seats. The first game we had this spring, we had standing room only crowd in Mesa, Arizona. The people were lined up at 7 in the morning to buy standing room seats. It was an incredible thing for spring training.
They really seemed to enjoy the fact that we were winners finally, that they, as Cub fans, could hold their heads up and root like the devil and be very proud of their team.
It's a very positive atmosphere in Chicago. It's gone crazy.
What should happen, Purse, the thought, if you guys don't win this year?
Well, there's always next year.
Well, what about this year? The Cubs signed all of their free agent pitchers, so the club is pretty much intact.
We got everybody back from last year. The main concern over the winter was signing the 3 starting pitchers who were free agents, and Dallas Green did that. So, you know, all the ingredients are there to repeat and maybe go a little bit further.
One major change. Veteran Larry Boa replaced at shortstop by rookie Sean Dunston.
What they talk about is just repeating and going to the playoffs and changing what happened last year. So I think they have a good shot at it.
Was 1984 a fluke? And we're out to prove that it wasn't a fluke, that we have a good baseball team, and that we can win in 1985.
And the Cubs hope they'll get another shot at the Padres. That's why tickets were scalped for their first spring training meeting and why this weekend's games are sold out at Wrigley. And the Cubs fans want to replace that memory of last year's Tiger World Series, which featured the Padres dancing their way to a 5-game defeat. One fascinating footnote, many Cubs fans did not cash in their World Series tickets, pouring thousands of dollars into the Cubs coffers. So in a way, Cubs fans have helped finance the signing of their players. Not making the World Series last year may actually help them make it this time. Len Berman at Wrigley Field.
You know, some wondered about the Mets, the Cubs, and the Padres this year, but all three are out quickly. The Padres have the lead in the West. The Mets and the Cubs are tied for the lead in the East. We have the managers of the latter clubs with us now. Davey Johnson of the Mets is in Cincinnati. Jim Frye of the Cubs is in Chicago. This is a different kind of season. You both had a chance to sneak up on some folks last year. Certainly that has changed a little bit this year. And we'll start with you, Jim. I want both of you to answer this question. Some teams perform better in the spotlight. Others do not. Jim, where's your club most comfortable?
Well, as far as sneaking up on people, let me answer it that way. I don't think we snuck up on anybody. By the All-Star break last year, everybody knew we had a good ball club. I don't think anybody allowed us to win the thing last year, so we can discount that kind of stuff. As far as how good we think we're going to be able to play, I think we're going to be able to play good. I know that the Mets have been called the favorites by most of the media, but I'm going to discount that also.
Okay, Davey?
Well, I've been hearing that the Cubs are the favorite, but last year was, as far as being a surprise last year, I agree with Jimmy. I don't think you sneak up on anybody in the National League. And as far as being a favorite to win a division, I think that's very nice. I've always liked to be on teams that were considered good and leaving it up to us to go prove it. How about the individual pressure? You both play in media centers. The media sometimes tends to overstate the good and the bad. Do you feel any added pressure this year?
I certainly don't. Well, I'll tell you the truth. Everybody talks about high expectations by the fans and the media. I think we have high expectations for our ball club. At least I do. I know we've got good pitching. I know we've got good hitting. I think if we just mind our own business and forget about the media and the fans and just play our game that we're capable of playing, I expect that we're going to play very well.
Pretty good rivalry between these two clubs. Are the players into it as much as the fans seem to be? Davey?
Well, we certainly are. You know, this year we've got something to prove against the Cubs because last year they beat us quite handily. But we feel, you know, with a young staff, we're much improved. We've had another year in the league, and we think we can compete with the Cubs this year.
Davey, you got enough pitching to carry you down the stretch?
Well, you know, we've been kind of crippled with some injuries here lately, but we're still holding our own, and we've got a fine crop of young pitchers not only here but in Tidewater. So, you know, if I don't mess up too bad, I think we can compete with Jimmy and his Cubs.
Also, it has to help a little bit when the front office makes the commitment to keep winning. The Cubs signing free agents on the pitching staff. The Mets bring in Gary Carter from Montreal. Thank you both very much. Carter, by the way, cracked a rib last week, but he is already back in Davey Johnson's lineup. And we'll be back right after this.
Flashbacks to the glory days of the Reds and the Mets. Davey Johnson, now the Mets manager, was wearing Orioles togs when he flied to Cleon Jones, and Jerry Kuzman and the rest of the Mets celebrate their miracle of 1969. Another left-hander, Will McEnany, on the mound in 75 for the Reds at Fenway Park. Yaz's fly ball squeezed by Geronimo. The celebration begins. In the middle of it, Pete Rose, still a part of the Reds as both player and manager a decade later.
NBC Sports presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today from Riverfront Stadium, it's the New York Mets versus the Cincinnati Reds. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Ford, who invites you to drive the new Ford Escort. Have you driven a Ford lately? By Light Beer from Miller, everything you've always wanted in a beer, and less. By Honda Motorcycles, Honda, follow the leader. And by Wagner, the right tool for painting.
A perfect day for baseball at Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati, where the Mets will send youngster Roger McDowell to the mound. He's 2-0. Pete Rose's Reds will go with Jay Tibbs. He's pitched well, but despite that fact, his record is 0-4. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Costas, along with Tony Kubek. Last night, the Mets prevailed 9-4. And before we go to the lineups for today's game, let's meet a couple of young stars, one from each club. Here's Tony.
All right, Bob, thank you. Darryl, last year you had some people mad at you. Some of your own teammates, and occasionally were taking shots at you in the paper. You got all your problems straightened out now?
Oh, yeah, I got my problems straightened out. It was a rough time for me last year with all the media hype coming into New York. Now I'm more relaxed. I can just go out and have fun and play baseball.
Now, as the senior citizen between you two guys, and I know you played some summer baseball together out in California, what advice do you have for young Eric Davis? Because he's getting the same kind of hype here in Cincinnati.
Well, most I can tell Eric is just don't worry. You know, you're struggling right now, but just continue to have fun and try to make the best out of it, because he's got a lot of great talent, and he's got a great chance to be a great ball player.
You're not playing today, but I know your manager, Pete Rose, is giving you a lot of sound advice. What specifically?
Well, he's just been telling me just to, you know, not worry about going through the rough times, because you're going to have the rough times. And just go out and play hard and try to put the ball in play and let my abilities take care of itself, and that's what I've been working on doing.
Is it hard for you? You've been a star at every level. You've played from high school through minor leagues, not being in the lineup?
It's been difficult for me, you know, not to play on an everyday basis, because I grew up playing every day, and it's something that I have to get used to, and something I don't want to get used to, because I plan on playing every day. But, you know, when I wasn't swinging the bat early, you know, I wasn't swinging it pretty good, and things haven't turned around. But the past week, I've been swinging the bat pretty good, and things are starting to change.
All right, Eric, Darryl, good luck to you both in your careers, and they're going to be long ones. We'll be back to Cincinnati in the starting lineups right after this message.
Hundreds of decisions. What pitch to throw and where. Each of these can be a game-saving choice. As a teenager, you also make decisions every day, and one of these can be life-saving. Don't let drugs ruin your ability to make decisions.
Take a big leaguer's advice.
Make the right choice. Say no to drugs. Baseball cares about you and your family.
Here's the lineup the Reds' Jay Tibbs will face today. Rookie Len Dykstra, the center fielder and leadoff man. Wally Backman at second base, hitting second. Keith Hernandez plays first base and bats third. The cleanup man, playing with a fractured rib, is Gary Carter, the catcher. Darryl Strawberry in right field, hitting fifth. Danny Heath plays left and bats sixth. Howard Johnson at third base in the seventh spot in the order. Rafael Santana bats eighth and plays short. And Roger McDowell is the pitcher for the Mets.
All right, behind Jay Tibbs, the defensive alignment will look like this. Cesar Cedeno in left, Eddie Miller in center, Dave Parker in right. He's been hot. Nick Esasky, Dave Concepcion, Ron Oester, Pete Rose at first, Dave Van Gorder, and Jay Tibbs on the mound. What a day he had yesterday, huh, Dykstra?
An auspicious Major League debut, a home run in his second at-bat. He tries to bunt and fouls it off.
Jay Tibbs, no wins, 4 losses, formerly out of the Mets organization, but as pitching coach Jim Cott said, he could very easily have been 4 wins and 2 losses with any support offensively. He's been walking a few too many. That's gotten him in trouble.
Dykstra chokes up, as you see, hits out of an extreme crouch and takes a ball. He struck out on 3 pitches against Mario Soto in his first at-bat last night, and then homered over the right field wall in his second trip. Also had a single and a stolen base on the night. Hits this one through the middle, but Oester backhands, quickly throws, and just barely got it. Dykstra is very speedy. He stole over 100 bases 2 years ago in the Carolina League. And Oester knew he'd have to hurry to get him, which he did.
It sounded like Jay Tibbs broke his back. Oester, who has lost a little weight over last year, he's gone off a lot of the weight programs, and he's a little light there. It may have enabled him to have that extra step quickly.
Second baseman Wally Backman now comes in at 304. Here's a guy they just could not keep out of the major leagues. He kept pounding on the door, and those little things he does so well have been noticed by Davy Johnson.
Well, his on-base percentage has always been good, and he's been helped an awful lot by their third base coach. Bobby Valentine has imparted some of the aggressive style of baseball that he played when he was with the Dodger organization.
There's Bobby V.
A prime managerial prospect, I would think. He's about ready.
Another good baseball man. Also the hitting coach on the lines at first, Bill Robinson. 2-0 the count. And Backman gets ahead 3-0.
You'd never know who was behind home plate, would you? Bellowing out the strike calls. Oshkosh, Wisconsin's own Dutch Renner. He doesn't need a megaphone.
Tibbs walks Backman on 4 pitches.
There they are. Ed Montague at first, Fred Brocklander at second, Lee Wire at third, and you will hear Dutch Renner all over the ballpark.
He must have been an Al Barlick fan as a kid.
Why isn't Al Barlick in the Hall of Fame? One of the great umpires. He still does some roaming around for the umpires, consulting, advising.
Keith Hernandez was saying at the batting cage last night how well the ball carries at Riverfront Stadium. Then he provided the proof in his first at-bat, launching his initial homer of the 1985 season deep over the wall and right. Takes inside for a ball.
It might carry well, but the Reds' averages don't show. In fact, the first 7 ball games played in this park this year, there was not a home run hit by either team. Dave Parker finally hit a home run in game number 8. Look at the hole that Hernandez can shoot through it with Rose holding the runner on.
And Tibbs chases him back. That game number 8 saw plenty of offense, however. That was the 17-9 Atlanta win.
The new owner, Mrs. Marge Schott, very upset that the game was allowed to continue or even start.
Dave Van Gorder, the Reds catcher, had a great comment after that game. Atlanta scored 12 runs in the first 2 innings. Van Gorder said, hey, you forget about the first 2 innings, we win the game.
Pete Rose shouting out to Jay Tibbs. Remember, he's a manager now, too, so he can only make those 2 trips. Runner's going.
There he goes.
What a throw.
But it skips by Concepcion. They would have had him. The throw had beaten him, but it was a little bit low, and Davey couldn't handle it.
It is not a bad throw. A shortstop doesn't mind a throw when it's short hops. So on a 2-0 count, Davey Johnson starts. Concepcion didn't really go out and get that ball. He waited for it to come to him. That was a good throw by Van Gorder. If he reaches out, he catches that ball on the fly, and he's got the runner.
Meanwhile, Tibbs has missed with 7 straight pitches. Here's the 3-0 to Hernandez. And he walks him, too.
Gary Carter and Keith Hernandez are patient hitters. Most of the rest of this team, they hack away. George Foster swings the bat, Darryl Strawberry. But Dave Johnson was saying when you've got Hernandez and Carter, you can see now that Darryl Strawberry, watching these guys, is getting more patient, taking a few more pitches.
Carter is in an RBI drought. He's driven home only 1 in his last 13 games. He suffered a fractured rib last Sunday in a game with Pittsburgh. Home plate collision with Doug Frobel. Ball misses, 1-0.
He's something like 2 for his last 36 at-bats. Jay Tibbs now is interesting. Pete Rose, who would be charged for a trip to the mound if he went out and talked to him, has worked out a system, and you see it in operation right now. He lets Dave Concepcion go out and talk to him. Player manager, last one, Don Kessinger, of course. They don't have a strict rule. I mean, Pete can walk halfway to the mound and say, hey, 2 outs or whatever, but if he's giving any managerial advice, they'll count it as a trip.
Carter takes a strike. As if we had to tell you with Dutch Rennert back there.
Pete Rose also, Jim Cott too, is saying that Tibbs pitches well from behind in the count because he has a great straight change. It's called a circle change. John Alexander throws at Mario Soto. Looked like a screwball at times.
Got him to go after a bad ball, 1-2. Carter tried to play on Tuesday against Houston, despite the fractured rib, lasted only 4 innings, and then sat out Wednesday's game at Shea Stadium against the Astros, but was back in the lineup here last night. He was involved in 2 separate home plate collisions in that 18-inning classic against the Pirates last Sunday. And he pops this one up.
Infield fly, if fair, but it's not. It's in foul territory.
Esasky makes the catch.
Pete Rose talks about Jay Tibbs over from the Mets organization. He's in that Bereni deal. Bereni now disabled with a sore shoulder, but Rose talks about Tibbs having 4 quality pitches. He said when he beat us the first time I ever saw him when he was a Met, He didn't have as good a fastball. Now he'll get the ball up there 90 miles an hour, slider, curve, and also an outstanding straight change.
The strawman has always seemed to hit well against the Reds, particularly in this part. Takes low for a ball.
He appears to have moved a little bit closer to the plate since last season. And I really think a guy like this, with the leverage he generates with that swing, if he moved a little closer, he could really tear up pitching staff. Pull the ball just a little bit more. Elbow Dutch. Although Strawberry does have outstanding power of the opposite field.
One pitch. Outside and low, 2-1. Strawberry made a great defensive play last night, leaping up over the barrier in right field to take a potential home run away from Wayne Krenchicki. Count levels at 2-2. Saw the graphics up on the screen a moment ago. Carter and Strawberry a combined 1 for 29 with runners in scoring position.
Neither of these teams scoring many runs. The Mets are about 4 runs per ball game. Cincinnati under that.
In the air to left center field, Cedeno glides over and calls. It finally comes down in his glove, and that's it in the top half of the first. For the Mets, no runs, no hits, a couple of walks, and 2 are left. We'll be right back. Roger McDowell is 2-0 on the year, picked up both victories in relief. This is just his second start, and here's the lineup he'll face. Eddie Milner is the center fielder. Pete Rose at first base, batting second. Dave Parker, 4 for 4 with 2 home runs last night, is the right fielder. Cedeno, the cleanup man and left fielder. Trade rumors swirling around him. Nicky Esasky, the third baseman, hitting 5th. The veteran Dave Concepcion, one of the remnants of the Big Red Machine clubs at shortstop. Oester at second base. Dave Van Gorder catches. Jay Tibbs pitches.
Defensively, behind Roger McDowell, Danny Heap, Lenny Dykstra, Darryl Strawberry, Howard Johnson, Rafael Santana from that shortstop factory in the Dominican Republic, San Pedro de Macorís. Wally Backman at second, Keith Hernandez at first, Gary Carter catching a day game after a night game, and then Roger McDowell. McDowell talking to Mel Stottlemyre, the pitching coach, who had that great sinker ball, says he has a great hard sinker and a slider. Not much off-speed pitch. In fact, we may see in this ballgame him accused of throwing a spitball.
First one to Milner. Shows the bunt and takes a strike. McDowell was the starter in the 18-inning game on Sunday. Worked a little more than 5 innings and was ancient history by the time the Mets finally won it over the Pirates.
Cincinnati's been getting some base runners. They just can't get hits when they need them. Except from Parker.
A ball and a strike to Milner. One thing the Reds do have is outfield depth.
They have 6 outfielders. That's why Cedeno may be expendable.
Got young talents like Eric Davis and Gary Reedus on the bench today. McDowell's 2-1 to Milner. 2-2.
If the Reds are to have a respectable year in the Western Division National League this year, it's going to have to be the veterans like Parker, Cedeno if he stays, Concepcion, Oester, Rose, of course led by Mario Soto, as the kids come along. And Pete Rose blends Eric Davis, some of the others into the lineup.
McDowell leaps to spear that one. A nice play for the first out. The Reds have been carrying a statue of Ty Cobb, the man whose legend Pete Rose is pursuing. They take it on the road, and they have it in the clubhouse. Sometimes before games, they'll dress it up in a Reds uniform and sunglasses, the whole bit. The great baseball collector, Barry Halpert, gave the statue to Pete as a 44th birthday present when the Reds played the Mets last month.
It's about 80 pounds worth to cart around on the road. That's what's happened. And some people, like they did with Roger Maris, beating the Babe's record with 60 home runs, still say, well, Pete had more at bats than Ty. But they just give Guy credit for his persistence, his dedication, and all the things he's done. Nobody's worked harder.
Pete will pass him in the total, and Cobb will have it over him in the average. And he is one hit closer, 78 away.
Rose has cut down that swing. Still the familiar crouch. He's cut that swing down an awful lot just to put the ball in play. In fact, outfielders are playing much more shallow. It's going to make it much more difficult to get those hits now than when he drove the ball and got all those doubles when they had to play him deeper and more honestly. Saw his son, Ty, last night, 8 months old. What a big kid he is. Big hands and stockily built just like Pete.
And now here's Parker, who is on a genuine tear. He's had them pulling out the tape measure the last couple of games. He set off a couple of rockets last night against Ed Lynch. 2 long home runs in a 4-for-4 performance. And he had 3 hits in the game before that against Atlanta. A 12-game hitting streak overall. 1-0.
Parker very quietly, and it went unnoticed, drove in 94 runs last year. Still drives the ball hard to left and right center field.
Hernandez. They'll get the force, and they won't make a play to first.
There may never, and I haven't seen all the great first basemen, may never have been a first baseman make the 3-6 double 3 like Hernandez does, or have as great a range to his right. He takes this ball right away from his second baseman, and then the ball kind of runs around in his glove, can't get a good grip, and he gets the lead runner.
Keith has won 7 consecutive National League Gold Gloves. And what a compliment his manager, Davey Johnson, paid him. Johnson, of course, played for many years with Brooks Robinson. And he said Keith is to first base what Brooks was to third base.
Well, you hear the name Gil Hodges, late Gil Hodges, and being great. He was, but he wasn't left-handed, so he couldn't get that lead runner as quickly at second base or on a bunt at third. He didn't have the running speed that Hernandez does. Pepitone was outstanding. Closest to him that I ever saw was the Cuban, Vic Power. He was a right-handed thrower. He played first base like a shortstop.
Did he go? They check at first base. And no, a ball and a strike. Ed Montague down there. Did you mention Wes Parker among the slick fielding first basemen? He was a good one.
He wasn't as fast a runner, as quick as Hernandez. Yeah, he was outstanding. Ferris Fain, years back.
1-2 to Cedeno. One of the teams mentioned as a possible destination for him, the Toronto Blue Jays. But the Reds are said to want a catcher in return. That's their primary need, and Toronto just doesn't have one to part with. Bobby Cox likes to use that platoon of Ernie Wood and Buck Martinez and doesn't want to break it up. McDowell stepping off.
Steve Horn, our statistician, alerts me to the fact that Vic Power was from Puerto Rico. He had an altercation with some umpires this past Winter League.
Up and in, 2-2.
That's what Gary Carter will have McDowell do. With that sinker ball that he throws and slider, he'll keep the ball down around the knees, but when the hitters start leaning over the plate and getting in more of a crouch to go after it, he's going to have to move hitters off the plate. Carter will keep him alert to that. He's a good athlete. What do you weigh, 110 pounds as a senior?
115, they tell us, as a senior in high school, and right now he's 6'1" and 175. We're talking your late growth spurt.
He played second base in high school in this area. Gordy Coleman, who works in the Speakers Bureau here, a fine hitting first baseman for the Reds and other teams, said he saw him, and he said he didn't even think he'd bother scouting him. He was so tiny.
2-2 pitch. The runner is going low and outside. Here's Carter's throw, and Parker is nailed. So Gary Carter puts an end to the Reds' first. So the doubleheader next Saturday. Tony, you and I will be at Comiskey Park. Others will see the Phillies and Mets, and then later on, the Yankees and the Royals with Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola, and the backup game to that, the Pirates and the Dodgers from L.A. Danny Heap leads it off in a second and takes a strike. He had a couple of hits last night. If you're wondering about George Foster, he's out with an injured knee. Mookie Wilson also unavailable except as a pinch hitter and pinch runner because he continues to have problems with an inflamed shoulder. There's Foster, who had so many great years here in Cincinnati. Off-speed pitch misses, 2-1.
Does that show a little desperation on Pete Rose's part to try and generate some offense? He's got his cleanup hitter up, Cedeno, who really isn't driving in any runs, so he starts his 3-hitter with 2 outs. Bat out of your number 4 hitter's hands. He was very upset after the game last night that the performance of Parker, who swung the bat so well, was wasted.
2-2 pitch. And it stays there. Ed Lynch went the distance last night against Pete Rose's Reds in the 9-4 win. It was only the second complete game in Lynch's career and better than 70 starts.
Last month of the season last year, he had the second best record in September in the National League team.
Tibbs flags it down and throws to Rose. Pete has been quoted as saying, if I ever want a younger guy to play first base, well, I'll just use Perez.
Can you imagine the added pressure on Pete Rose now having to think for 25 people instead of himself, not just worry about his own personal stats, winning and losing, but the personal problems of the other guys on the ball club? There's a lot more duress, which is going to make it a lot more difficult for him to get those 78 extra hits.
Switch hitter Howard Johnson takes a ball. The 78th third baseman the Mets have employed since 1962 when the franchise came into existence. It's over Rose's head, but Oester is there and on to Pete for the second out.
Outstanding anticipation by Ronnie Oester. He's from the Cincinnati area, and as soon as he saw that sign go down for a slider low and in, he was moving before the ball left the bat. Now, the first couple of steps that you saw, the ball had not yet gone off the bat of Danny Heek. Bouncing over Rose's head, it looked like it was going to be an artificial surface base hit, and he cut it off.
Rafael Santana, who will be busy in the next couple of weeks. Ron Gardenhire on the 15-day disabled list with a pulled hamstring muscle. 1-1. That's why they brought Dykstra up, fill that roster spot.
Now, we were talking about the shortstop factory, San Pedro de Macorís, Dominican. 5 shortstops starting in the major leagues from that little town of about 100,000. That boy Dutch. Rafael Ramirez in Atlanta. Julio Franco, Cleveland. Fredo Griffin at Oakland. Tony Fernandez, Toronto. And there's a kid at Toronto, the only teenager in the major leagues. Keep this name in mind. A switch hitter named Manny Lee. He's got a chance to be a good one.
Well, he was once Met property.
Met, and then went to Houston, was left unprotected. Pat Gillick snared him up. He's a non-roster player, very alert.
Yeah, the Mets sent him to Houston as part of the Ray Knight deal last year, and then the Astros lost him to Toronto, and they regret it. It was a great count.
Great Dominican scout, Epi Guerrero, who knew about Manny Lee, worked him out as a kid, apparently. 14, 15, he was hanging around, and they drafted him.
Santana becomes Tibbs' first strikeout victim. A 1-2-3 second. Still no score in Cincinnati. Cedeno steps in to start the Cincinnati second. Throughout this afternoon's broadcast, we'll be taking some looks back at the memorable playoff series in 1973 between these two teams. Strike one to Cedeno. You'll recall that in Game 1 here in Cincinnati, Tom Seaver struck out 13 and drove in the Mets' only run with a double, and yet lost 2-1 on a homer by Rose in the 8th and a game winner by Bench in the 9th. Then in Game 2, Matlack threw a 2-hitter here. Staub had a homer. Mets evened it with a 5-0 win. And we'll pick it up with some highlights at Shea Stadium in Game 3 right on through the end of the 5-game series a bit later on this afternoon. 0-2 the count.
Give you an idea of how good Roger McDowell's sinker ball is. Start keeping count of how many balls are beaten to the dirt right in front of Gary Carter or fouled off the leg. It's happened about 5 times already. We're only in the second inning. It's the kind of pitcher that the catcher puts an extra padding in, gets the finger out of the glove. It just keeps boring in and jamming that thumb.
He put a heavy dent in the pass list this afternoon. All of his friends and relatives from this area.
57. 57 tickets left.
He's a product of Coleraine High School in Cincinnati.
Want to wish his best to his mom. I guess we're televising here. Mom, not at the ball game. A little. There's Davy Johnson. The trivia question on the board about Davy Johnson, the manager. Last night, I'll let you handle it as the game goes along.
Cedeno goes down swinging. He was in the on-deck circle, was he not, Davy Johnson?
Ask the questions so our fans can participate. This is fan participation
Oh,
day.
I thought this was like Karnak. You give the answer first and the question later.
Okay. Go ahead, tell the fans now that you spoil it.
Well, folks, Davy Johnson, as the more astute among you are no doubt aware, was in the on-deck circle, both when Hank Aaron hit his 715th and when Sadaharu O hit what? Number 715. Also for him, okay.
He ended up with over 800, of course.
1-1 to Esasky.
And Dave Johnson said Sadaharu O would have hit home runs here, too. He didn't just hit those little dinky ones.
2-1.
Billy DeMars.
Great minds thinking alike.
Third base coach and hitting instructors have been trying to cut down his swing, get him to go the opposite way. I'm reading Bob Costas' notes here. That's how I got that ad lib.
Here's the 2-1. Breaking ball is on the outside corner, 2-2. Esasky definitely has the power, but he struck out once every 3 at-bats last year. They've got to cut that down. It'll be a foul ball.
Another one beating the dirt. We haven't heard any complaints yet, but there have been teams. In fact, he relieved against Cincinnati. They thought he was throwing a spitter, and he said, my ball, since I went to a with the seams delivery, and sometimes they don't touch any seams, they call it a dry spitter. You see, it goes down. He missed most of last season after elbow surgery. He pitched in just 3 ball games.
Just 24 years old. Here's his 2-2 pitch. And he struck Esasky out 2 in a row to open the second as we check with Bill McAtee in New York.
Alrighty, in Chicago, after Steve Garvey homered in the first, Gary Templeton has hit his 2nd home run of the year. He had one yesterday. He takes Scott Sanderson over the ivy wall in right for the Padres. 2 hits and 2 runs. 2-0, bottom of the second.
Going to check with Bill to see if the ivy's got leaves on it yet or has been warm enough.
Just a little bit of green. I was there earlier this week, and it's just starting to sprout. Meanwhile, the Padres continue to make life miserable for the Cubs. Deja vu.
The Mets have certainly made this year miserable for Cincinnati thus far. They've beaten them 4 straight times.
Santana charges and throws Concepcion out. Yeah, last year, the Mets won 9 out of 12 from Cincinnati, and they've beaten them 4 straight in '85. We'll be right back after these messages from your local station. Roger McDowell leads it off in the top of the 3rd, then back to the top of the order for Dykstra and Backman. Ball 1 is high from Tibbs. Tibbs was one of 3 prospects the Mets gave to Cincinnati last year in return for Bruce Perrenne. Perrenne presently bothered by shoulder troubles, and that puts an even greater strain on the Mets' already thin starting pitching corps. Two 2-0. 3-0. Tibbs walked a couple in the first inning and got out of it, then had a 1-2-3 second.
Understand the reception for Billy Martin in Yankee Stadium was not that pleasant yesterday. There was some boos, but I doubt if the boos were for Billy. I think the boos were probably for GS, the owner of the ball club. He continues to treat his players like horses, and I guess the horses like human beings. Byron Yogi.
Tibbs walks McDowell on 4 pitches to start the 3rd inning. Of course, the Yankees did win the ball game last night. Dennis Rasmussen pitched well. I was talking to Mike Lupica, the New York Daily News writer, earlier this week, and we mentioned that the Twins had won 10 in a row after a 9-game losing streak. Mike pointed out that as Dykstra drops a bunt, which Rose will play and tag him as McDowell moves up. To credit Dykstra with a sacrifice, Mike pointed out that if George Steinbrenner owned the Twins, Billy Gardner never would have been around to see the 10-game winning streak.
Well, and Mike Lupica wrote a pretty good article, very honest article. It was circulating around the ballpark last night here. Bill Burgish, formerly worked with Steinbrenner, reading it. Bob Housen, he's going to retire. He's the president of the ball club. He retire in July. Good article. An honest article.
And that's what we like to see, isn't it, Tony? Some straight talk. Here's Backman. Takes the strike.
Jay Tibbs continues to have that control problem. He's had a good part of this season. Can't keep walking guys and getting away with it.
On a change, Backman swings and misses. It's 0-2.
He's always been a pretty good strikeout pitcher. His minor league stats indicate that.
McDowell at second with one out. He walked and was sacrificed there by Dykstra. Hernandez is on deck. In the dirt, and it gets away from Van Gorder on the wild pitch. McDowell moves to third, makes a big turn, but Van Gorder retrieves it, and McDowell will stay there.
Tried to snap off a breaking ball. That is the third wild pitch thrown by Tibbs this season. Van Gorder just tried to smother it, keep it out in front. Couldn't do so. Now the infield, Pete Rose going to move him in. He's got to, even this early in the ballgame on the artificial surface, because his team isn't scoring many runs. Jay Tibbs, second half of last season, was the most consistent starting pitcher that the Reds had.
1-2 pitch. And Backman grounds it to Oester, who will hold McDowell and throw him out.
Anybody put a pitcher down at third base, this is a really slow, sluggish guy. They may have had the contact play on. With one out, many teams will do that. As soon as the ball comes off the bat, you're going. They fire home if you get in a rundown, let the guy rip the ball, get the second base in scoring position. But a pitcher, they're going to let him sit there.
Keith has done his damage against the Reds and everybody else throughout his career. Takes strike one. Came in hitting .312 for this season. The runner-up, of course, last year to Ryan Sandberg in the MVP balloting in the National League, an award he won, actually shared it with Willie Stargell in 1979 when he was with the Cardinals. McDowell at third with two out now. Up high.
See how quietly Bobby Valentine is moving around, if at all, in the third base coach's box. He's a guy that in days past would run up and down the line as a coach and try and get the pitcher to balk. They stopped him from doing that.
Hit hard, but Concepcion had him played perfectly and throws Keith out. So the Mets get a runner as far as third base, but don't bring him across. And we're still scoreless after 2.5.
Esasky! Hallowell! Where's Hallowell?
Hi, Hallowell.
Okay, game 3 of the 73 playoffs at Shea Stadium. Series even at a game apiece. Remember this play, Morgan grounds to Milner, on to Harrelson, and they complete the 3-6-3 double play. But then a collision as Rose tried to take him out. It erupts into a fight. This lasted for about 15-20 minutes because the fans got into it. They had to send Seaver and Yogi Berra and Willie Mays out to left field to try and convince the fans to stop throwing things in Pete's direction. The Mets won that third game 9-2. Rusty Staub had 2 home runs. Jerry Koosman was the winning pitcher. But Rose would have his moment in game 4, and we'll see that a little bit later on today. Oester in the Cincinnati third. 2-0 the count to him.
They still boo him when he goes back to New York. Pete Rose. Ron Oester had a Jekyll and Hyde season last year. The first half he was just awful. Second half of the season, starting in July, hit about 280. He had a 21-game hitting streak through that stretch.
A reminder here that, as always, we'll select an NBC Light Beer from Miller player of the game. And appropriately enough, we'll wait till the game is over to do it. The 2-1 pitch. Goes the opposite way. Heap is going to track it down.
Like when Pete Rose took over, there were a lot of players that seemed to be rejuvenated. Davey Concepcion started hitting well. He moved it back to short. Oester was somewhat rejuvenated. The man next to Rose on his left, you saw him with the glasses a while ago, is a fellow named George Scherger, who makes a lot of moves when Pete's out in the field. And Scherger was the man who managed Sparky Anderson in the minor leagues, and Sparky said, if I ever get to the big leagues, I'm bringing you up as a coach. And George Scherger was kind of the guru there. Scherger was the guru for Sparky when he was here, and he is that for Pete Rose now.
Scherger is 64 years old. He managed for more than 2 decades in the minors. There he is to Pete's left. McDowell's 1-0 pitch to Van Gorder. Down into Santana. Nice hop for him. 2 down in the Cincinnati third.
Santana started at short for Davey Johnson last year, was really going great guns, then had an injury. Couldn't get her back in gear. Why do they develop so many great shortstops in that one little town, San Pedro de Macorís? In fact, there are about 16 major league players from that little town. Pedro Guerrero, George Bell, you go on and on.
Tibbs has 2 hits and 12 at-bats this year, and McDowell throws one by him for strike 1. Late swing again, 0-2.
You don't usually see sinker ballers throw this hard because their sinker ball straightens out. He is really throwing hard.
They say he has great movement on his fastball as well. That was a breaking ball down and away.
Almost looked like a forkball. He dropped down and looked like he turned it over more and took something off.
Clint Hurdle told me before the game, when this guy is on, as Clint put it, he throws half baseballs. The ball moves so much.
He's a guy I think they counted on to be a reliever. To come in and get you the ground ball out, set up Sisk and or Orozco. I think the Mets would still like to have somebody in the middle that they were a little more confident in for the setup man, because last season Sisk came up with a shoulder problem. Orozco had some arm problems.
He blows Tibbs away for strikeout number 3 for McDowell. And at the end of 3 in Cincinnati, no score. Mets and Reds. Bob Costas and Tony Kubek in Cincinnati. Tony, everybody else has had their say. How about yours on the Mets pennant prospects?
Well, coming out of spring training, I thought their pitching staff, starting staff, was going to be a little thin. But Ed Lynch gave him a good ball game yesterday. If Bereni comes back, and you saw what Sid Fernandez did in the minor leagues, he struck out 17 2 nights ago, so he may be ready to come back up very shortly.
He pitched extremely well for Tidewater. I think his record there is 4-1.
Right here, top of the 4th, Gary Carter, Darryl Strawberry, Danny Heath. No score in the ball game, just 1 base hit. Rose has that. Should be out of play deep in the seats. No balls, 2 strikes to Gary Carter. He fouled out in the 1st. Rose singled in the 1st. He's got 78 to go to break Ty Cobb's record. Parker forced him at 2nd, and he was caught stealing. Ball and 2 strikes, says Dutch Rennert behind home plate. Be interesting to see with all the wear and tear that Carter's had on those knees. Up in Montreal, catching a day game after a night game. Slider, fly ball right field, Dave Parker. 1 out.
Well, Tony, Gary Carter has led National League catchers in games caught 6 different times in his career, and that'll become a concern as he moves into his mid-30s, and you begin to think, especially in a league without a DH, about where you can get him into the lineup and keep his bat in without forcing him to crouch behind the plate day in, day out. Maybe play some first base or something else.
Well, I think Davey Johnson's plan, so we can get him his 550 to 600 at-bats, is to move him out in the outfield on occasion. Certain tough left-handers. We might even give a Darryl Strawberry a rest. Danny Heath. 2 balls, no strikes. Darryl Strawberry fly to left field in the 1st. The Cubs and the Mets tied for the Eastern Division lead with 13 wins, 7 losses. Montreal 14-8. Deep, this has got a chance. The warning track, Cedeno's there, about 2 feet shy.
You know, the thing about that was, Tony, he didn't hit it especially well, and it was an opposite field drive, and it still took Cedeno to within a step and a half of the wall.
If Strawberry continues to stay that far over the plate, the strategy on pitching him is going to be just keep running the fastball away. Make him hit to the field where he will hit it with less authority. Sure, he's going to hit some home runs to left and right center field. If he ever gets the knack of moving up on the plate, we can take that high and outside fastball and hook it to right center or right field. He's really going to confuse some people. And he may do that in his adjustment period as he gets a little bit smarter and watches the Fosters and the Carters and the Hernandez hit. Danny Heap, he grounded back to the pitcher in the second. Fly ball center field. Eddie Miller can go get it. Starts turning around, but he catches it. The ball just kept carrying. Stay baseball. It flies out of here pretty good. Middle of the fourth here in Cincinnati. Still no score. We'll be back after this message.
So Larry Holmes, who changes his mind about retiring more often than George Steinbrenner changes his mind about who his manager should be, will fight again on NBC primetime, 9 Eastern time, Monday, May 20th. Dick Enberg, Marv Albert, and the fight doctor, Ferdy Pacheco, will be there.
A breaking ball to Eddie Milner leading off the fourth. Will be followed by Pete Rose, then Dave Parker. Roger McDowell. Just one base hit in the ball game. San Diego, the favorites over in the Western Division, leading the Cubs 4-0. That ball game in the third. 2 balls, no strikes to Milner. Howard Johnson up tight at third base. Count goes 3-0.
When the Padres beat the Cubs yesterday, Sutcliffe was the loser. He's now 3-3, and Andy Hawkins won his 5th without a defeat for San Diego.
How about Rick Mailer, 6-0? Atlanta Braves. Pete Rose. 78 to break Ty Cobb's record on the all-time hit list. So now McDowell loses his control.
Let's fuel the argument a little bit further. Obviously, Rose playing the 162-game seasons, Cobb playing 154. So Rose has the advantage in hits per season, Cobb in hits per games played.
Pete Rose single to left field in the first. Let's see if the manager puts a hit and run on. Eddie Milner can steal. McDowell, very quick move to first base. In fact, Milner now talking to the first base up. Ed Montague saying, hey, to be that quick, he had the balk to get over here. Last season, the Mets had a terrible time throwing out base stealers. There he goes. Rose goes after the sinker. Carter's throw, he's got it. So Pete Rose continues to try and generate some offense, and Rose had the hit and run on. He just swung through a sinker. Milner, by taking that little glance, look at by when he glanced over his shoulder, he didn't have a straight line, a beeline going to second base, but Carter now 2 for 2 throwing guys out today. 0-2 on Rose.
He threw Parker out earlier, and anytime you can throw out about 40%, and again, that's what he needs, just 78. Anytime you can throw out about 40%, you're doing very well. He's at about 50% so far this year.
Rose got hit. He turned his back on a no-ball 2 strike and took one that just nicked his leg, so he's on base. He threw a slider, and Pete says, you want to hit me 0-2? Go ahead. Didn't even attempt a whole lot to get out of the way. Just took it in the back of the leg. Would damage him a little less. Now it's Dave Parker. No score in the ball game. We're in the bottom of the fourth. Pete Rose has the only base hit in the game. Check swing ball. The Reds started out this season well. They were getting a little bit more hitting and decent pitching. Now they've stopped hitting, except for this big guy. his 94 RBIs last year. The same number he had the year that he won the National League Batting Championship. 1 ball, no strike. 2-0.
Actually, he won it back-to-back in 77 and 78, and you could get a lot of support for Dave Parker at that time in the late 70s as the game's best player.
Great running speed. You still see his throw in the All-Star game in Seattle at Carter to nail a runner. 52. Foul ball. Will he get the lead runner? Yes, he does. Rose really went after Santana. The artificial surface ate up Wally Backman. He did keep it in front of him to get the lead runner. Looked like a sure two. Remember, the Mets play their games on dirt and grass. This field's so much faster. Rose upends Santana, but he wouldn't have had to throw anyway. So there are 2 outs in this scoreless ball game. It'll be Cesar Cedeno. He struck out in the second. Chopper. Howard Johnson's played fine defensive baseball for Davy Johnson. So, first runner stranded in the ball game for Cincinnati. No score. We'll be right back after these messages from your local stations.
Now game 4 of the 73 Championship Series, and it's sweet revenge for Pete Rose. Harry Parker's pitch in the top half of the 12th, driven over the wall in right by Pete. Rusty Staub just has to watch it leave. You can tell how happy he was about it. He was involved in the altercation with Harrelson the day before. The next day in game 4, his 12th inning homer ties the series at 2 apiece, and we'll see the 5th and final game in a couple of innings.
Jay Tibbs starts Howard Johnson, the switch hitter, off with a breaking ball strike in the 5th. He'll be followed by Santana, then the pitcher Roger McDowell. Only Rose had to hit in this ball game. 2-4. Rose is right in the bag of the sister. 1 down. While we have a chance, Bob, we've got kind of a sad note. Here's Rose playing in for a possible bunt. It was right almost in foul territory. So there's 1 out. Bill Kunkel, former teammate, outstanding American League umpire, passed away last night. A long bout with cancer. And boy, nobody's ever battled it harder the last 4 or 5 seasons. So our condolences to the family, son Jeff, and the Texas Rangers organization. A marvelous, fun guy, Bill Kunkel.
Tony, another sad note this week from the world of broadcasting. Frank Lieber of CBS TV, only 51 years old, passed away a few days ago. Our sympathies to his family and to all of our friends and his colleagues at CBS.
A ball and 2 strikes on Rafael Santana. 7 in a row set down now by Jay Tibbs. There on the black, low and outside corner. 2 outs. So Tibbs seems to be getting in the groove. He walked 2 in the first inning. Backman and Hernandez pitched out of it. Had a 3-up, 3-down inning in the second. Walked McDowell leading off the third. He was left stranded on third base. 3-up, 3-down in the fourth. He's got 2 quick runs here in the 5th. Came into the ballpark last night, Bob and I, as we did early, and the first thing that popped into my head was a great columnist line, Dick Young, who calls them the Lords of Baseball. Not anymore, folks. It's the Lords and Ladies of Baseball. The new owner of the Reds, Marge Schott, came into the ballpark with her mascot, her St. Bernard Shotzi, doing interviews. Principal owner fouled out of play. There have been other female owners. Grace Comiskey, the 40s and 50s. Joan Payson of the Mets. This is Tom Yawkey Jean right now with the Boston Red Sox, and of course the wife of the late Ray Kroc, Joan Kroc. She is quite a fan. In fact, before she owned the team, Marge Schott, team starting to struggle a couple of years back, she had a plane go over the stadium, a big banner trailing that saying, "Pete, Joe, Tony, we need your help." Talking, of course, about those great Big Red Machine teams. Ray Morgan, Pete Rose, Tony Perez. Ball pops out of the glove. He still has time. So on a 1-2 count. 3 up, 3 down, 8. 9 in a row set down now. Still no score here in Cincinnati. Bottom of the 5th here in Cincinnati. We've got a scoreless ball game. Just 1 base hit. Pete Rose has it. Jay Tibbs has exactly 3 bag. Base hit. Esasky on a 1-ball, no-strike pitch, leading off the 5th for Cincinnati. Tommy Helms coaching down at first base for Pete Rose Reds.
Concepcion, who stands in now, is hitting .241, and his batting average has been off sharply each of the last 2 seasons. No question we're talking about a player in decline here, but he is still a better than average defensive shortstop.
You get to that age, you're going to lose some of your skills, but they said when Rose took over, somehow he came up with a little more zip on his throws from the hole in short, hit the ball better last September. So maybe the principal overachiever of all time, Pete Rose, is going to have a team that overachieves this year.
Although Concepcion had a curious way of expressing the inspirational effect Billy DeMars down at third base that Rose had on the club. As Davey said, you see a 43-year-old man doing those things, it makes you sick.
Pete Rose came right out and he said, when he saw Davey Concepcion, he said, this guy was an imposter playing. When I first saw, he was just feeling for the ball, didn't have any enthusiasm, any life. He was a little bit disappointed moving over to third base for Foley. 2-0 now. Got to pitch up in the strike zone, something McDowell has not done too much today. He's had a pretty good sinker down low, so it goes 2-1. Now let's see if manager Pete Rose with Billy DeMars starts the runner, Esasky. He's not a base stealer. He's a sinker ball pitcher. And you're ahead in the count. He doesn't want to go 3-1. Carter most likely would not pitch out. He may be going. No, he's not. 3-1. Now will he go? We'll see. Billy DeMar. Phillies for a lot of years. My hitting instructor went to Montreal. Pete Rose wanted him here. Concepcion grounded to short back in the 2nd. He's not going. 3-2. So Pete Rose had his team burned twice today. 2 attempts at steals. Carter's caught them both.
Those were speedier men than Esasky, Parker, and especially Milner. So he may not test Carter's arm again, at least not too soon.
A lot more responsibilities this year, Pete Rose. His team's struggling. He's going. Shot foul. So the one thing Pete Rose is finding out, it seems like when he was talked to by reporters in the past, it was about his extended hitting streak or approaching the record or getting close to Stan Musial's National League achievements. Now he's got to answer for the whole team and why you are playing this guy in that spot. Why do you continue to play Milner leading off? In fact, he's had to answer the question why, when he wasn't hitting, is he in the lineup? Different media focus now on Pete Rose. Still 3-2, no score. Esasky at first. He's going again. Concepcion reaching the hole on the hit and run. The Reds will have runners on first and third and nobody out. A veteran, Concepcion, found the hole as Wally Backman was going to cover on the steal attempt. An opening in the infield. Backman was covering the bag, and he got the veteran Concepcion to execute. Now it's Ron Oester. Johnson in tighter at the corner. Oester fly to left field. Chop foul. One thing about a Roger McDowell, he's just 1 pitch away. Everything he throws from a double play and 2 out. That terrific sinker. He's got 6 ground ball outs in this ball game. It looked like the last one was going to be a ground ball out, except Backman was on the move. score. Reds with 3 base hits. Mets still do not have a hit off Jay Tibbs. Two. There is nothing you can ask that man about baseball currently, a batting average, on-base percentage for either league. And I know you on your talk show, Bob, St. Louis have had him on, and he has a mind. Talk about the steel trap. No balls, 2 strikes, first and third, way inside, 1-2.
You know, it really is astonishing. You'll ask him about a reserve infielder for the Seattle Mariners or some club like that, a team he could not have seen that often, but just from studying box scores, he'll tell you everything about the guy.
Guy behind home plate, Gary Carter, does the same thing. He studies media guides. He said, every once in a while I pick something on the media guide that helps me in how I should pitch a hitter. He's got that massive baseball card collection, 25 or 30,000 he's been collecting since he was a kid. 2 balls, 2 strikes. There's the defensive alignment. Johnson moves back a little bit. Infield at double play depth. Over Santana might come home at short. He's relatively close. 2-2. He just snapped the bat off and almost gets the bat boy. McDowell has, but if you're hitting off, you would say he throws a heavy ball. Like Mike Garcia from Cleveland, or Bob Lemon, the sinker baller. Bob Stanley currently with the Red Sox. You hit the ball, it goes stumpy here on the good part of the bat. Looks like a little slider. Just sawed it right off. A heavy ball. The inning started when Esasky singled to left, then on the hit and run, 3-2 count. Concepcion singled to the vacant second base hole, but runners at first and third with nobody out. Still no score, 2-2 count on Ron Oester. Take the 3-2 now. Rose will probably start Concepcion. Keith Hernandez just gave the signal to Santana. Backman at second. If he's running, you may have to come all the way across the diamond at first. And if you've got a chance, and the runner breaks off third, Esasky going to home. That's a new rule they put. It's not a rule in interpretation of the umpire. You used to be able to step toward third and then decoy not throw to first. Now you've got to fake a throw to third base. Only stepping, they felt, was deceiving the runner at first base. So they put a little new wrinkle into that interpretation. 3-2. No score in the ball game, bottom of the 5th. Reds have something going. Concepcion on the move, fouled on a play. Interesting to see now because Oester has had a 100-plus strikeout year in the major league. Carter, if he swings through it, you might notice he'll look the runner at third back. While he's in his motion going to second base, he'll glance at the runner at third, try and freeze him, and then go through with a throw to get Concepcion. That little glance will hold Esasky at third, or they hope it will. 3-2 all over again. Runners at the corners. He's quick to first base.
McDowell has struck out 3, and obviously looking for either the ground ball or the strikeout here.
Concepcion on the move. Base hit, center field. Reds take a 1-0 lead. Oester will go to third. Still nobody out. Still runners at the corner. Veteran players. Concepcion gets a piece of the ball. Oester goes with a sinker. Very nicely up the middle with Concepcion on the move. Now going to be a lot of conferences. Our infield's going to congregate around the mound. And Davy Johnson will have a talk as his bullpen gets going. Right now with the score 1-0. Let's go to New York.
All right, Tony, it has turned into a home run festival with the wind blowing out at Wrigley. After 3 San Diego home runs, the Cubs have gotten 2, one from Ron Cey, and this one from Ryan Sandberg, a 2-run home run. It came off of Mark Thurman. Both teams, 4 hits, 4 runs. They're in the 4th.
Davy Johnson buying a little bit of time. San Diego, Chicago Cubs, 4-4 tie now.
Johnson got Joe Sambito, just recently signed, the former Astro, and Calvin Schiraldi. Sambito, the left-hander, Schiraldi, the right-hander, up in the bullpen.
Sambito coming off that Tommy John type of elbow surgery. Don Ossie of the Orioles has had that. Reds have a chance for a big inning. Van Gorder, he grounded to short. They're in close at the corners. About halfway at short, Santana. Backman at second, all the way back, looking for the double play. 1 ball, no strikes, nobody out. Reds with 4 base hits, 1 run. Mets, all zeros across the board. 1-1. Demars, you had a big session with Van Gorder underneath the stands about 3 hours before the ball game, hitting off a batting tee. 2 balls and a strike. Van Gorder heading the count. Rose has a chance right now, if he elects to start another runner off first base. It's worked twice in a row, both on 3 and 2 counts. He's holding. Should be 2. Captain Santana. Long throw, he's got it, but a run scored. So, Concepcion comes home off third base. No RBI in the double play off the bat of Van Gorder. But it's 2-0. He was playing him so nicely, right up the middle. Santana had the tough play because he was playing Van Gorder way over in the shortstop hole. So he had to come a long way to get the little flip from Wally Backman. Tibbs. Backman throws him out, but the Reds on a couple of base hits, 3 base hits, get 2 runs. We'll go to the 6th. There's your score.
Well, glancing at his 0-4 record, the Mets might have taken him lightly, but now they call him Mr. Tibbs. No hits through 5, and a 2-0 Cincinnati lead. Dykstra will start it off in the Mets 6th. Grounded out and sacrificed. Fastball high. Mets have another good-looking young outfielder named Billy Bean at Tidewater. Their farm system has been very productive over the past several years. Into center field, and Milner almost in his tracks for the first out.
The last 2 years, the Mets have had the most productive 1-loss records of any farm team in baseball.
As most of you law-abiding fans know, this telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. Hernandez waits for his chance as Backman steps in. Pete Rose maneuvered a little bit, playing the hit and run, starting some people, produced a couple of runs in the bottom half of the 5th for a 2-0 lead. Backman has walked and grounded out. Ball 1 to him.
I think now, starting through the 3rd time in the Mets lineup, that Dave Van Gorder is going to start mixing in the breaking ball a little bit more. Probably the changes. We haven't seen a lot of those changes that he throws. He's been pretty much fastball. We'll be getting the Mets out with.
As you mentioned, Tony, he throws that circle change, also favored by his teammate Mario Soto, but he throws it harder relative to his fastball than Soto does. That's a strike. 2-1.
You wonder what we're talking about. You take your thumb and your pointing finger and form a circle, like when you say, hey, everything's A-OK, and the ball rolls many times off the little finger, and it'll have a little screwball action or tailing action away from a left-hand hitter. So it's got a change of speed and a little movement on the ball to give you 2 different effects. Like the split-fingered fastballs that's become so popularized now. You get the downward action and the change of speeds.
Here comes the 2-2. Breaking ball is bounced up. 2 outs in the 6th. Tibbs has walked 3, and he has struck out 2.
He is now retired 11 in a row, going back to the sacrifice by Len Dykstra in the third.
Now Hernandez, he had to back a U-Haul, I would guess, up to Shea Stadium after Sunday's game against the Pirates, because before the game, they presented him with his Rawlings Gold Glove, his 7th in a row, his Hillerich and Bradsby Silver Slugger Award for being the top-hitting first baseman in the National League. A local bank in New York presented him the Team MVP trophy, and he also got his National League All-Star plaque. Pretty good day's work. Just foul.
When Tibbs was in the Mets organization, he says that some of the Mets, I guess the minor league pitching coach, wanted him to throw his curveball from 3/4 instead of more overhand. He had a difficult time adjusting to it, so what he did was he went back home to Birmingham and worked with his old high school coach, Dan Garrett, back in Birmingham. Same coach that coached Britt Burns. They worked out together.
He got Tibbs with it, and that's going to be the first hit.
He got him solidly, too. That ball dropped straight down. Looked like a fastball out over the plate. Hernandez was just trying to shoot the ball up the middle. He fouled that ball hard down the left field line. A couple of pitches before that, Van Gorder tried to pick it up. Nope, that's the circle change. Got a little bit up in the strike zone, but you can see the little dipping action and tailing action. Van Gorder knows what's at stake, but he can't get out there in time. It's interesting, you know, only 5 2/3 innings, but a player gets it on his mind. And you don't ever want a ball hit to you that you thought you might have gotten that stopped the hitless ball game. Van Gorder had it in his mind, but it didn't bounce far enough back to him. Plus, Hernandez has pretty good running speed.
Hit him on the fleshy part of the leg, upper thigh, so he's not badly hurt. Ball 1 to Carter.
Last season, Tibbs spent his time at 5 different teams in 3 different organizations. That's how he jumped around. Phillies, Mets, Cincinnati.
Look out. Deep left field. We might have a tie ball game. It is gone. So just like that, about 60 seconds ago, Tibbs may have been thinking no-hitter. That went with the Hernandez hit, and the shutout and the lead went on home run number 4 by Gary Carter.
RBIs number 6 and 7. We talked earlier about his RBI and hitting drought. A fastball up. He may have wanted to get it inside more to try and jam Carter, tie him up. You know, Carter over the last 2 years has hit that ball in there a little bit better. He has opened up his stance. He did it last year. He can get the hips and the barrel of the bat out a little bit quicker now than he did a few years ago. He used to drive the ball to right center field a lot, or they jam him on that pitch.
For all the talk about his teammates' displeasure with him in Montreal, he drove in 106 runs for them last season. Swing and a miss by Strawberry, 1-1.
Carter's only got 4 home runs, but let's see, 2 have already won ball games, haven't they? Opening day, 10th inning, Neil Allen.
1 against the Cards and 1 against the Reds.
We're talking about making your home runs count. This one gets him back in the ball game.
He beat Soto a 1-0 game in a series last month at Shea Stadium with a home run. Bruce Perenni, the former Red, was the winner in that game.
The only knocks on Carter, he's got that enthusiasm and that smile. Some think he's publicity seeking all the time.
A long drive off Strawberry's bat. Milner going back on the track. Milner leaps and makes the catch.
They're going to keep pitching Strawberry this way to diminish his power. The catch was made a little bit more difficult probably than it was. He circled now. It would have hit the yellow line or close to it. So we saw Strawberry in right field last night take the ball, a home run away. This side, I don't know if it's a home run, but it would have hit the wall. Good catch, Milner.
Tied at 2.
We're going to show you this catch by Eddie Milner off the bat of Darryl Strawberry to finish off the 6th inning. It had a chance to be a home run, and if I sounded like I wasn't as enthusiastic about that great catch as I should have been, it's because I just saw Gary Pettis, the fine Angels center fielder, make the catch. It's one of the best I have ever seen. Robbed Jesse Barfield of a 2-run home run in Anaheim. And we had the great high jumper Dwight Stones in the booth, and Dwight Stone swore that Pettis was 5 feet off the ground when he caught it.
Milner is the leadoff man here in the last half of the 6th. Danny Heath into the bullpen, and it's just out of play.
In fact, Reggie Jackson said the catch that Pettis made, automatically when that one catch got him a gold glove, that's how great it was.
There are those who say that Pettis is the best defensive center fielder to come into the American League since the days of Paul Blair.
Well, Jimmy Reese, who was Babe Ruth's roommate, has been in baseball for 7 decades, was in uniform on the Angels bench, and he said, I've seen DiMaggio and Blair, and Pettis is right there with him.
A ball and a strike to Milner. Dowell misses low and inside. And the Cubs come from a 4-0 deficit to claim a 5-4 lead in the 4th at Wrigley Field.
I wonder if that south wind is hitting. The wind's blowing out.
Might find the hole, and it does. A leadoff hit for Eddie Milner. Big turn as Strawberry gets it back in. Milner ran the last time he was aboard, but Carter cut him down. Just for fun, we continue to compare Rose to Cobb, and of course we stipulate the eras are so different, the circumstances so different, that this is more just food for thought than it is anything conclusive.
I'm glad of one thing, that Pete Rose did not elect when he played out, became a free agent a couple of times, to go to the American League and try and get that hit record, hitting in the DH spot. He's doing it when he's playing every day, and there's some days you go out there and he's tired. Here in the American League, he can just DH every day and not tire out and play every day, right and left-handed. Makes it even more meaningful to me.
Shortens up and takes a ball. Sisk getting ready. Earlier, Schiraldi and Sambito were up. You know, Ty Cobb not only won 12 batting titles in a 13-year stretch, 9 of them in a row, but he didn't win one year when he hit 401 and Sisler hit 420. Also didn't win one year when he hit 389 and had another year over 370 when he didn't win.
Cobb also had 323 years.
Except for his rookie season, he never hit less than 320. Again, Pete has played 162 game seasons, and Cobb played when a full season was 154.
It's a good count to run on. 1 ball, no strikes. Rose doesn't strike out much. Batting from the left side, he'll give Milner a little bit more protection. Carter will have to throw over the top. He's not an easy guy to throw, get out of that crouch, because all his stuff is low and going down. He's got to catch a lot of low balls. He's on his way.
Milner's going, and Rose fouled it off.
Carter did not have a good pitch to throw on that time, had Rose not gotten a piece of it. You've got to like the style, the way he keeps the ball down. Probably will be more effective on the dirt and grass. Although there are some sinker ballers like Tommy John now with the Angels thinks it's to the benefit of a sinker baller to pitch an artificial surface. He says, I want to throw double plays and the ball gets to my infielders quickly. And if I know where I'm throwing it, I can position it properly.
McDowell and Tibbs locked in a 2-2 tie, and the pickoff attempt is wild. Milner will make at least second, and he's heading for third as Backman chases it down, and then he flipped it to Strawberry, who was facing the play, but that turned out to be academic. A 2-base error, and Milner is over at third with nobody out.
He throws a sinker over to Keith Hernandez at first, and Hernandez tries to go after it. And it's right into the path on the other side of the runner. So a 2-base error given to Roger McDowell. Now we'll have the infield forced to come in on this turf for Pete Rose.
As you mentioned earlier, Tony, McDowell has a good pickoff move. As a matter of fact, he's picked a couple of runners off already this season, but that one got away from him, and even Keith Hernandez couldn't save it. Rose has 7 RBIs this year, 3 doubles. There is only extra base hits. Little tap foul, 1-2.
Well, you know, Darryl Strawberry in right field has an outstanding arm. Haven't seen Lenny Dykstra, the center fielder, throw. But he is playing shallow. There's Strawberry in right. And, of course, Heap in left. I would say an average arm. But they're playing so shallow for Rose with nobody out, unless it's a sure thing, Billy DeMars won't send the runner Milner.
Got an all southpaw outfield for the Mets today. High and away. The Mets play Rose pretty much straight away. A lot of teams will play him to hit more to the opposite field, but Davey Johnson's positioning has them playing for the most part straight away.
Well, that's that computerization against Soto. If there were a pitcher who throws that hard against him, good, they'd play him way down the left field line. Shade him a lot more toward left. Now he throws harder, but this is a sinker baller. He's liable to get out in front and pull a little bit more, hit up the middle.
'24-year-old Roger McDowell facing 44-year-old Pete Rose. Full count. The Mets have muscled their 2 runs. A single by Hernandez, a long home run by Carter. The Reds have scrapped and maneuvered and scampered, and in this case, a wild pickoff may have helped them. A walk to Rose. Nobody out. We'll be right back after we check with Bill McAtee.
All righty, we talked of the 25-mile-an-hour winds in Chicago. We now have a 6th home run. This from rookie Sean Dunston, his first in the major leagues. Dunston, of course, replaced Larry Bowa as the starter. The Cubs just picked up 2 more, so it's now 7-4 Chicago.
How sweet it must be for the fans at Wrigley Field. No team they would rather see the Cubs defeat than the Padres. That became an instant blood rivalry.
And those of you fans who have not yet seen Sean Dunston, he's going to make some errors. But you talk, kind of like Don Zimmer, who coach, said it's the best throwing arm he's ever seen. Best combination of throwing and running he's ever seen. Hits in a lot of territory.
Here's Parker. And he rips the first one in between Hernandez and the bag. A run will score. The Reds have the lead. Rose on his way to third. DeMars stops him there. It's a double for Parker.
So Dave Parker comes home to Cincinnati. He is so popular here. They say he's a completely different man and personality here in Cincinnati than in Pittsburgh. A sinker ball that he got up about belt high inside part of the plate. Parker, before the game, had a little league team that he ushered him around. He was like the Pied Piper. They followed him all over the place. He gave him a tour. It intentionally walked Cedeno now.
Funny sight here on Wednesday when the Reds were trailing the Braves 13-2 in the top of the 5th, and they had a rain delay of 2.5 hours, and obviously if the game had been washed out at that point, Atlanta's 13-2 lead would have disappeared. So Cedeno and Mario Soto stood in the Reds dugout and did an extended rain dance. Didn't work. It stopped eventually, and they got the game in.
See where the trainer of the Cincinnati Reds, Larry Starr, made a comment about stopping the game so nobody gets hurt, and Jim Quick, the umpire, threw him out of the game.
Yeah, Starr said, why don't you stop it before someone gets hurt? And Quick was quick to turn and say, why don't you take a walk? You're gone.
Doug Sisk is throwing. Interesting to see. He is coming on, going from a hard sinker baller like McDowell to one who's also a sinker baller. Sisk doesn't throw as hard. See what success he has.
Now here's an interesting situation as McDowell departs. Sisk, who is notorious for control problems, comes into a situation where there is no place to put Nick Esasky, the first man he'll face. Bases loaded, nobody out. The numbers on Sisk. The ERA ballooning to 6.75 at this early stage. He Faces Esasky. Bases loaded, nobody out. First pitch swinging, fouls it off.
You talked about his base on balls. He had that shoulder problem last year. And although he had an outstanding ERA of 2.09 and 15 saves, he struck out 32, but he walked 54, and that's in just 77 2/3 innings pitched. But he can get you 2 outs in a hurry with that sinker. He might come home. They're playing halfway.
Off-speed pitch fouled right back toward us. And a souvenir for Tony Kubek. Our statistician, Steve Night Train Horn, rapidly getting out of the way. You know, Steve, if you'd merely told me, I would have reached over and made the play. I tried to give you the opportunity. Esasky has had 2 career grand slams. Fastball is launched to deep left center. This could be the jackpot. Dykstra leaping. Did he come away with it? No, grand slam. It's a good combination to take a hard sinker baller like McDowell and follow him up with a softer sinker baller like this. There's too much of a sameness that the hitters can sit on. And Esasky got that ball up, and the ball stayed very, very well today, and the little wind just kept drifting it out. And Concepcion follows with a base hit.
That's good through.
He's going to make it all the way to third base. Concepcion is now 3 hits away from 2,000 in his career. Teammate Cesar Cedeno passed the same milestone earlier this season, so they each have less than half as many hits as their manager.
2 shortstops in the National League who've been the 2 principal ones in this league for more years than, of course, Ozzie Smith. But Boa and Concepcion both have gone over 2,000 hits. Boa, in fact, needs a couple of games to catch Rabbit Moranville, all-time games by a shortstop. But both of them, you never thought they'd get 2,000 hits in their career.
A triple for Concepcion. Still nobody out. And the Reds leading 7-2, and Sambito pops back up. Oester fouls it away.
Dykstra found out about artificial surface in a hurry, didn't he? The ball just kept on going. He couldn't catch up to it.
On Esasky's 3rd career grand slam, we had to wait, as did second base umpire Fred Brocklander, who went out for a look because, as you could see on the replay, the ball almost literally grazed the top of Dykstra's glove as he made a leaping effort. Oester strikes this one into left field, and it drops. Concepcion comes home. It's 8-2. Oester looks for a double and has it. The throw skips by, but Hernandez backed up.
Artificial service double, and what Oester did was he took advantage of the left-handed throwing of Danny Heath. Goes the opposite way, a sinker ball up again. And Heath had to turn all the way around. And because he's left-handed, gave Oester a couple of extra steps. He made the double, like Pete made most of his, to his career from home plate to first base.
Is 0 for 2.
I'll tell you one thing, if they get Esasky hitting for this team, it's going to cause some trouble.
He reaches for one and bounces it up the middle. Backman will throw him out. And Oester moves to 3rd with 1 out.
You get Esasky hitting. You work Eric Davis, who has got ability that equals Darryl Strawberry. Some people feel he runs faster than Strawberry. And if he can get worked into the lineup, they can make a deal.
The Reds have exploded for 6 in the bottom of the 6th.
Infield still in with 1 out. Got to be aware of a squeeze play right here.
Ball 1. Tibbs will go to the mound in an unaccustomed situation. A big lead. He has not received much run support. Part of the reason why he's 0-4. 1-0 pitch. Up and in. That was the pitch, expecting the squeeze.
They suspected it. They will do a couple of with a right-handed hitter if the runner breaks. They want you to throw right at his head. We're not telling you kids in amateur baseball do it. That's what they do on a professional level. Although there are some teams don't like that. They'll even pitch out and try and come back even with a right-handed hitter.
Breaking ball gets away from Carter, but not far enough.
And that can get confusing. The catcher can call a curveball or a slider, and then the runner breaks, and the pitcher throws a fastball inside, and the catcher's moving outside, and it can cause confusion. Some teams want you to go with a pitch that they call. They didn't really get down and smother it. They kept it close enough. How about a squeeze on 3-0?
He walks him on 4 pitches.
3 bases on balls in this inning. 1 intentionally to Cedeno. They come back to haunt you, don't they?
Another bitter irony for Sisk in this inning. He has seldom been victimized by the gopher ball. In almost 200 innings of work in his career, the grand slam by Esasky was only the 5th home run he's yielded. Happy walk to the clubhouse for Sisk. Sambito comes on. The Reds have hit around. Joe Sambito, once the premier left-handed reliever in the National League, late 70s, early 80s with the Astros, had a series of elbow operations. The Astros released him. He tried out with several National League clubs, finally signed by the Mets a week ago. He faces Milner and misses with ball 1.
You saw the difference on the very first pitch. Dropped down, a little more sidearm. And 82 is when his problem started. It was just 9 ball games. Didn't pitch at all in 83.
Milner was out in front, 1-1.
84 at Tucson, trying to battle back. Just 8 ball games. Last year with Houston, Bob Lillis worked him back in 32 games. They took the tendon from his right wrist, put it in his left elbow like they did with Don Ossie and Tommy John. They're still at the corners for Cincinnati.
This game turned, you might say, around Eddie Milner. He made the great catch on Darryl Strawberry against the wall to end the top of the 6th after the Mets had tied at 2-2. Then he began this inning by singling, advancing to third on a wild pickoff, and now the Reds have batted around. Milner gets another chance. He's 1 for 2 with a walk today. 3 balls and a strike.
Joe Sambito yesterday how far back he thinks he is. He said, I have no idea. He said, I hope I can still be effective, but not like I once was with that fastball I could throw by people and that real hard slider. So I'm going to have to find a different way to get hitters out.
Full count to Milner. Sambito debuted for the Mets against his old Astros teammates on Wednesday. Pitched to a couple of hitters. In a game the Mets lost at Shea Stadium. Sambito wasn't involved in the decision.
His good years with Houston, when he was a stopper, he was striking out right around a batter per inning pitch.
And he walks him to reload the bases.
Hitter number 10 in this inning.
Been aboard all 3 times today. He singled, was hit by a pitch, and then drew a walk in this inning. He doesn't have a hit this season right-handed, 0 for 7. That's just part of the litany of achievements for Pete Rose. They're going to have to do some editing for his plaque in the Hall of Fame. High ball 1. bases loaded. A ball and a strike. Rose is the 11th hitter in an inning, which has already seen the Reds score 6 times.
Like Reggie Jackson, now with the California Angels, you can go through all the numbers and 500 home runs as you can with Rose, but championships seem to follow Reggie around as they do Pete Rose around. And to me, there have been a lot of guys who've had good years, but they weren't on winning ball clubs for whatever reason. Sometimes because they weren't winners themselves. You cannot say that about Reggie nor Pete Rose. But in 6 World Series, 7 League Championship Series. He's hit .381 combined in League Championship Series.
Up high, 3-1. And the red-hot Parker waits for his turn next. Count to Rose.
Well, there are some thoughts that the starting staff was not deep enough. And also, Davey Johnson said this last night when I asked him, if you had to make a trade right now, what would you go for? He said, I think I'd like to get somebody that I was more certain of setting up a Roscoe and Zisk. This last year at 46 saves between them.
But what about Sisk as a setup man for Roscoe, as he so frequently was? And Sisk has been very ineffective so far this year. The payoff. He walked him to force home another run.
Rosen down on base all 4 times. 2 walks, hit by a pitch, and a single.
There have been 5 walks in this inning. An inning highlighted by the Esasky grand slam, the 3rd grand slam of his career, and the 4th homer for him this season. Tom Gorman up.
3 consecutive walks now. Tibbs, Miller, and Rose.
Parker doubled home the go-ahead run earlier in this inning. He's 1 for 3.
Blue Jays, we talked about the Cincinnati and possibilities of trades. The Blue Jays have a young kid they drafted off the Mets roster, left unprotected, a left-handed Lewis Thornton, never played above A-ball. He's still with the team, and I think the Blue Jays would like to send somebody over to the Mets so they could send Lewis Thornton down to get some playing time. Dennis Lamp's name was mentioned.
Hernandez, it ate him up. It doesn't happen often, but it gets by Keith. 2 more runs come home. Rose advances to 3rd.
The ball was hit so sharply, probably will be in air, but I wonder if Pete Rose blocked the sight line of Keith Hernandez. Rose is leading off, and I don't know if he blocked his view or not. They give him a hit.
They're ruling it a base hit.
That's charity.
It's now a 9-run inning in an 11-2 game.
Ball's hit hard, and it is artificial surface. But that's Keith Hernandez down there, folks. He eats those up, usually. That's a charitable official scoring decision, I think.
Now Cedeno with a chance to join in the fun. Still only 1 out. Fouled right back toward us again.
It does give Parker 2 RBIs, and we would not have had any on that particular one. Is that a base hit with Hernandez down there?
Shouldn't be a base hit with anybody down there. It might be a tough play, but it's a play that can be turned in. And Keith would be the first one to tell you that. 0-1 pitch. The change misses.
The 13th hitter in this inning to come to bat. this kind of game and all that mush, didn't they? Atlanta, 17 runs off them. Like everybody in that Atlanta team had at least 2 hits for starters. And Gene Garber's the only one who didn't have a hit in the ball game, and he scored a run.
The one pitch to Cedeno. Base hit. It's a double-figure inning.
Davy Johnson coming out to talk to Renner. I think he's probably going to make a double switch. Take Carter out now that the game appears to be out of hand. He's going to take Gary Carter out. Give him a break after the night game yesterday. Bring in Schiraldi.
So we'll sort it all out when we come back, but first let's go to New York.
Bob, well, the Reds have broken it open. The home run festival continues in Chicago. Craig Nettles has hit his second home run of the day, a solo home run, and those 25-mile-an-hour winds have now produced 7 home runs. The Reds have 10 runs in the inning. See if they can get 11.
That's like the game we had, Boston and the White Sox with the wind blowing left field. We had 6 home runs on that Saturday afternoon and a 43-minute rain delay. Another youngster. One thing Davy Johnson did last year, some people said, don't bring that 19-year-old kid up who only pitched A-ball, a little bit in AAA. His name was Dwight Gooden, folks. Davy Johnson did to cash it. Yes, we're going to bring him up. I know what he can do. Davy Johnson also moved Mookie Wilson out of the leadoff spot because his on-base percentage wasn't that good. Now he's got Calvin Schiraldi, another youngster, coming on in a game that looks all but hopeless for the Mets.
A couple of years ago at Lynchburg in the Carolina League, Schiraldi's teammates included Dwight Gooden and today's Reds pitcher, Jay Tibbs.
Well, Davy Johnson's familiar with a lot of the players because he managed for 3 years in their farm system and was successful at each division, level he went to. So he had a lot of these guys. So we're going to have the new catcher, Clint Hurdle, will probably bat in the pitcher's number 9 spot. And Schiraldi will probably bat in Carter's spot. So Schiraldi's down, and remember Nick Esasky earlier in this inning with 3 men on base. He came up, and here's what happened. His 3rd career grand slam on a sinker ball right at the knees. Left center field.
Watch how close Dykstra comes to catching it. Great angle here. And just over his glove.
It's one thing you ever want to do, Bob. If you ever start scouting in the big leagues, evaluating talent, always look for a 6'4" center field.
A Strawberry or a Winfield might have had it.
Or somebody that can jump like Gary Pettit.
Swing and a miss, 0-2 to Esasky. Dykstra is listed, and perhaps charitably, at 5'10". So at the peak of his leap, he came up a little short.
He's a tall L.B. Pearson.
The 0-2 pitch. Curveball and a called 3rd strike. So Schiraldi has restored some order by fanning the first man he faces. And now it's Concepcion, who's 2 for 3. Had a triple earlier in this inning.
Got all kinds of parts from this Big Red Machine of the 70s, mid-70s. Foster over in the other dugout. Rose now manager, Tony Perez. With Pete Rose wanted to set an example, not just the pitcher, set an example for the young kids. David Concepcion.
Hurdle's throw to 3rd is not in time, and the runners move up. We'll see if it's a wild pitch or a pass ball.
I suspect pass ball as the ball looked like it hit off his glove. He hadn't been catching that long. Remember when he was the cover boy when he came up? The Kansas City Royals. Now they've scored that a wild pitch. I know he hadn't been catching that long.
Reds lead it 12-2 in the midst of a 10-run, sixth-inning outburst. Good fastball. Threw it by him.
As long as the game appears to be out of hand, I will differ. I beg to differ with the official scorer again. Scored a wild pitch. That's a fastball. Same as Hernandez should have had an error. Not given a hit and 2 RBIs to Parker.
Curveball fouled out of play.
He's got to get meaner in this job, Bob, and start speaking up a little bit. Come to my defense, if nothing else.
Tony, in case you're wondering, and I know with a curious, active mind such as yours, there's no doubt you were wondering, the record for most runs in one inning by one club.
18.
That is correct. Curveball puts an end to it as Giraldi comes in and strikes out Esasky and Concepcion. The record is 18, and we'll tell you about it when we come back after these messages from your local station. All right, in the last inning, the Reds sent 15 men to the plate. They scored 10 times. They had 7 hits, 5 walks, a Met error, and a pass ball thrown in. The record, as Tony Kubek said, as we pull out the handy record book, 18 runs in one inning for one team. The Cubs did it. That's the National League record, but that happened back in 1883. The modern Major League record, the 17 scored by the Red Sox in the 7th inning of a game in June of 1953 at Fenway Park against the Tigers. So the Reds didn't come close to that, but that is small consolation for the Mets.
See where your idol, Mickey Mantle, now is going to be doing some television for the Yankees, and that last on-camera spot reminded me of something he said. He worked with Kurt Gowdy on the other game of the week. They came to us on camera. Kurt took a lot of time. I took 5 seconds. Mickey never said a word. He said, from now on, I'm going to put a sign on me that just says Phil, F-I-L-L. I'm just filling space here. That's what I was doing there, folks, while he went through the record books.
Well, Tony, I figured the mere sight of your beaming countenance would be pleasure enough for our viewing audience. Here's Heap facing Tibbs. Hits one off the fist, and it might drop in. It does.
I'm going to send an audition tape to Mickey to the cable television station that Rose has left the ball game. Cesar Cedeno has gone over to first base. So Pete's going to give himself a rest. Right fielder out there looks like Walker, and a new third baseman looks like Crenchicki. Foley's gone to short. So, or as you know, Davey Concepcion's still out there, number 13.
So it's Crenchicki for Esasky at third base. Eric Davis is in right field, and Dwayne Walker is in left field.
And I'm going to correct that because Esasky's still at third. Excuse me, I misled you. While we were looking through the record books, they sneaked them in on us.
A ball and a strike to Howard Johnson. A couple of big stories on this Met team. We mentioned their need to have a setup man come through for Orozco. Another one focuses on this guy, Howard Johnson. They gave up a precious commodity to receive him from Detroit. A capable starting pitcher. Their number 3 starter last year behind Gooden and Darling, Walt Terrell. Terrell's the kind of guy capable of winning 12 to 15 games for you, and the Mets were already thin in their starting pitching corps.
Well, Terrell pitched a complete game shutout last week.
So if Johnson doesn't come through and justify that trade, there'll be some sting involved.
And with that infield over at Detroit and that thick grass, he's got a chance over there. Walt Terrell will pick up about 15 wins for him. He might hit a little bit in that bandbox, too. Not a bandbox, left to right center field. Remember the game he televised? He had 2 home runs in Wrigley Field?
Although, how's he going to get to bat?
That's right. See that? That doggone DH has really got me down. I thought they eliminated already on the strength of our NBC poll of a couple weeks ago.
It's clogged your brainwaves. Still 2-2 to Johnson.
And I saw Tracy Ringlesby, an outstanding writer in Kansas City. I said, you and Moss Klein from New York, I said, watch the American League so much, the DH has numbed your head. In fact, I think it's deadened your brain cells now that you think the American League is still more stimulating baseball. with the DH. How can you think that?
Here comes the 2-2 to Johnson. Change-up hit into left center field. Either Milner or Walker can handle it, and Milner does.
Well, that may have been one of the most penetrating and great questions we've ever asked in an interview. How's he going to come to bat?
To get right to the point. You know, when you talk about the American League, I've said this before, it's a mixed bag for purists. The designated hitter might raise your ire, but on the other hand, there are more old ballparks with natural surfaces than in the National League. So you take what you can get. What they may get here is a double play, which they do. Santana grounds into the 6-4-3. Tibbs cruises through the 7th with a 12-2 lead. And now here's another edition of Baseball Remembers. You know, Tony, earlier you mentioned the trivia question, who was in the on-deck circle when both Hank Aaron and Sadaharu Oh hit the 715th home runs of their respective careers, and Davey Johnson's the answer to that. Met fans know that Johnson made the last out in the 1969 World Series when playing for Baltimore, flying out to Cleon Jones. He also got the last hit ever surrendered by Sandy Koufax, Game 2 of the 1966 World Series.
He also shares a home run record for second baseman. That's a pretty good name. Rogers Hornsby with, what, 42? As soon as he got in that Atlanta ballpark. Pete Boyer got there out of Yankee Stadium, hit about 24, drove in 90-some one year.
Oester is the leadoff man in the last half of the 7th, with the Reds leading 12-2.
That's some changes for the Mets lineup, too. John Christensen out in left field.
And it looks like Danny Heap has moved to first base. Hernandez out of the lineup. Slow breaking ball swung on and missed, 0-2. Schiraldi came in and got them out of the rubble of the 6th inning by striking out the only 2 men he faced, Esasky and Concepcion. Now he's ahead of Oester, 0-2. Breaking ball misses that time. With the fastball and just misses low and in. Schiraldi doesn't care about the scoreboard from a personal perspective. This is his chance to show Davey Johnson and Mel Stottlemyre what he can do. Has to dodge the broken bat. Backman fields it and has no chance.
Ron Oester's going to have to put a special call in to Pee Wee Reese. The Hillerich and Bradsby Louisville Bat Company. That's the second time he's got the distance record today. He broke the distance record when his first bat went to the dugout in foul territory. He holds that, and now he holds the one in fair territory with this one.
So Oester now has a 3-for-4 day going. And Van Gorder steps in. Other than the pitcher Tibbs, Van Gorder is the only Reds starter without a hit today.
Another one of Cliff Gustafson's guy, University of Texas. He's the coach down there. Schiraldi pitched in the College World Series, went 4-0, won the championship. Bert Hooton, Jim Hack, who's pitching very well in relief for the Toronto Blue Jays. Great college coach.
The man he's facing here, Van Gorder, played for one of the greatest, Rod Dedeaux at USC.
But really, he was really the roommate of our producer, David Neal, which is the important part. He was on the World Championship team that year for Rod Dedeaux, who coached the U.S. Olympic team.
And despite that unsavory influence, he somehow made it to the major leagues, and he draws a walk here.
Dave Van Gorder, what he remembered most about rooming with our producer David Neal, said his sloppiness. But his Socks all over the room.
Certainly a fine reference. Now Tibbs comes up. He looks over to DeMars to see if they want to sacrifice for a crucial 13th and 14th run.
Yeah, the pitcher, he's going to be bunting. That's not taboo in baseball. A position player will cause some problems. He's not going to be bunting. He's not going to have him bunt.
Even Dutch Rennert's decibel level has been lowered a bit, with the game out of hand at 12-2. 2-0. And now Hurdle, who replaced Carter, goes to the mound to talk with Schiraldi. The slugfest continues at Wrigley. The wind blowing out at 25 miles an hour, Bill McAtee tells us. 9-6 Cubs.
Mets pitchers have walked 7, have hit 1. Not much you can do, Davey. Save your bullpen for tomorrow.
Had a walk in the middle of the 10-run sixth. And Rennert stages a comeback.
I see him off and on during the offseason, live in the same part of the country in Wisconsin. And I think he's stopped officiating basketball games now.
Schiraldi sends Tibbs back to the dugout, and Calvin is now fan 3.
Ignacio Perez, Tony Perez.
In addition to those 371 lifetime homers, he has almost 1,600 career RBIs. He's 15th on the all-time runs-driven home list, and all 14 players ahead of him are in the Hall of Fame.
Look, he's got 7 100-plus RBI seasons, 5 90-plus RBI seasons. If those aren't Hall of Fame credentials, I don't know what is. Think of how many they will have off that 75, 76, those World Championship teams. Rose, Morgan, Bench. Sparky's going to be there. He manages those clubs. Concepcion's got an outside chance.
In the dirt. Hurdle blocked it. 1 out, 2 on. Bottom half of the 7th.
For a while there, it looked like George Foster. He had a 50-plus home run season. He was driving the ball so hard. I'm not saying it's impossible that he won't be there, George Foster.
Unlikely.
Yep.
Check swing foul. 1-2.
Reds have got to do something. They've got 6 outfielders. They'd like to move somebody. We commented earlier, so I would think that Bob Howsam, who will retire again about July 1st, and/or Bill Burgess, who's taken over the general manager job, came over from the Yankees, will be on the telephone a lot, trying to strengthen their team as the season progresses. Hope the kids come along.
Breaking ball fouled at the plate, and the count holds at 1-2.
I'm anxious to see the next hitter. I've seen him in the spring of the year, but not yet in actual Major League Championship season competition. What about Eric Davis? Tremendous power. Runs with anybody. Throws well.
Again, the 1-2. And a called third strike. So Schiraldi has fanned 4. Evidently, the scoreboard was wrong, or Milner is wrong. And it was Milner. Because Milner stood there and then stepped back in as if to say, come on, Dutch, give me a fourth strike. What harm would it do?
Here he comes, the man. Well, that man already is a legend. The guy stepping in, Eric Davis, the guy that they've already hung the tag on, as they did Strawberry and others, unlimited potential. Will it be a curse for him or what? Sometimes it turns out to be that.
You know, you were talking about Bob Howsam. He has been associated with winning clubs, primarily in Cincinnati, but also in St. Louis. Among the many big deals he helped to engineer, the one before the 1972 season, which may have taken the Reds from a good club to a great club. The curveball is lofted into shallow left field with Christensen coming on, shading his eyes. Santana back from shortstop, and Christensen drops the ball. Sun just brought him to his knees. It wouldn't come out. Santana overran the ball. It will probably be an error. And he just battled the sun as long as he could. You could see the glare off the glasses. And since everybody was running with 2 out, 2 more runs come home. Look at this. He battled as long as he could. And I don't care what tint of glasses you use, when it's right in the corona or center of the sun, the glasses don't help. And you take your life in your hands when you do that. Other guys have shied away from that and let it bounce. It's ruled as a double for Eric Davis. And now Dwayne Walker swings and misses. Every year, at least a couple of times, they talk about a play like that where Jack Lang is in the ballpark. Dick Young have always talked about a team air concept. Now, those get charged as earned runs against Shirali's ERA. That's a catchable ball. Yes, it did get in the sun, so why not give a team air to save the pitcher earned runs? And it's just a logical thing to do, but the rules committee is somebody battles against with Jack Lang and Dick Young, and they won't do it. But Dick favors it. Dick Young favors it. Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. He and Jack Lang was in the ballpark today. Well, I agree with you and them. It just makes sense. 1-1 pitch. 1-2. Here's the deal I was referring to. Bob Howsam engineered a trade sending Tommy Helms, Lee May, and Jimmy Stewart to the Astros prior to the '72 season, and he was criticized for it, but he got in return Jack Billingham, Cesar Geronimo, Ed Armbrister, Dennis Menke, and the key man, Joe Morgan. I thought the key man was Ed Armbrister, especially in that '75 World Series. The bunt play. Don't know if it turned the series around, but it sure stirred up some controversy. Ask umpire Larry Barnett about it. Paid him a lot of off-scene money going out speaking. He was the speaker most in demand that year. Explained that call, picked up a little extra change. There's Tommy Helms back now with the Reds after being involved in the deal we just detailed for you. He's their first base coach. If you hadn't read the papers lately, talked a little bit about Ricky Mailer, 5-0 or 6-0 for Atlanta now. Dale Murphy got an MVP start. Tied the April record for RBIs, owned by Ron Say with 29. What is he slugging? He's still got to be slugging about 800 or 900. Batting almost 400. Murphy slugging 863, Steve Horn tells us. And the Hawk may be back off those knee problems. Andre Dawson had a big week last week. Montreal Ball Club playing good baseball. The new manager, Buck Rogers. Will Steve Rogers leave the ball club? They're talking about this weekend. He'll be gone and be down in Houston. If he approves the deal, rumors we hear. 10-5 man, 10 years in the big leagues, 5 with the same team, so he's got to prove it. Walker drills it foul. Count holding full. Here's a guy right here, Dwayne Walker, who's got some extra base power. The DH may be suited for him. If he gets over to the American League and he can DH against right-handed pitching, he could throw some pretty good numbers on the board, I believe, if he got the right ballpark. Toronto was interested in him during the spring. Finally went out and got Len Matusak and designated Willie Aikens for assignment. Walker pops it up. Hurdle off with the mask. And in foul ground. Whoop. He drops it, but it pops into the glove of Howard Johnson. A play Pete Rose can relate to. Remember the 1980 World Series when Pete was playing for Philadelphia, and in the 9th inning of Game 6, Bob Boone dropped the pop-up, and Pete was Johnny on the spot just as Johnson was in this instance. My former manager at Quincy had them working on that play all spring. Vern Hochheit. And after that fielding misadventure, Hurdle is the leadoff man here in the 8th. 2-0 the count to him.
The only way he felt he could get back to the major leagues is become a multi-position ball player. Play the outfield, play first base, pinch hit, catch.
Circumstances are far less dramatic than when Boone and Rose combined along the first base line in the 1980 World Series, but it's the same thing. Out of Hurdle's glove and into Johnson's, and technically Hurdle gets an assist on the play. Concepcion throws him out. Nice play by the veteran. Let's go to New York.
All right, Bob, while the Reds rout the Mets in Cincinnati, here in New York at Yankee Stadium, the Royals have tied it up in the 6th. George Brett with a solo home run off Ron Guidry. Brett's 3rd home run of the year, and the Royals and the Yankees are tied at 2, now in the 7th.
Now, a good portion of our audience is still scratching their heads wondering about your Vern Hoshite reference just before we went to the commercial.
He's one of the Mets coaches, my manager in the Yankee organization at Quincy, Illinois. Only man I know that got married one morning at 8 o'clock, left his wife, went out the ballpark, managed the ball game, never had a honeymoon. He's been in baseball a long time. I was kidding when I said they worked on that in spring training. It was just a good way of getting an old friend's name on television.
You wacky funster.
Vern Hoshite drove the bus with the manager, caught, and when the field got wet, taught us all how to go to the minor leagues before artificial surface and throw kerosene on the field, light it. We almost took all our singed our eyebrows and hair so we could dry the field for that night game. I don't know how hard we old-time ball players had it, Bob.
Who was the longtime minor leaguer who made it to the majors this year as a coach and said, you know, I'm traveling in the major leagues for the first time. Dykstra with a base hit into left center. He's got good speed, but he'll hold it first. So the longtime minor leaguer said, I go on the road in the majors, and there's a phone in the bathroom in the hotel. In the minors, our fire escape was a rope.
The Dodgers San Antonio team with their couple of buses air-conditioned, and they got videotape replays in there. They can watch movies on the long road trips down in Texas.
Now it's Backman. And Wally on the day is 0 for 2 with a walk. Cleveland leading Texas 2-1. And the Dodgers and Pirates tied at 4 in the 5th at Three Rivers. One and one. Today's attendance 21,362 at Riverfront.
Bob, the Reds have a chance to have a pretty decent pitching staff as the season goes. Left-hander Browning, who's missed a couple of starts, he's pitching tomorrow against Gooden. He caught a ball off one of his pitching fingers. Little finger shagging balls out in the outfield. But with Soto, if Tibbs pitches like this, Browning, Jim Cott now has got Frank Pastore in the bullpen, but he's got that quick delivery that he's using that Johnny Sain gave to Jim Cott for help prolong his career. Stupor, if he comes back.
A chance for Milner, who flips down the glasses and makes the catch. Well, Stupor had pitched pretty well until he was really roughed up in that game against Atlanta. Lasted just about a third of an inning.
Tommy Hume has come back a little bit now. He was a stopper for this club a few years ago, then had knee surgery a couple of years ago. Jim Cott, that's one of the men that Pete Rose wanted to come back as his pitching coach, and he told him years ago, if I ever get a manager's job, I want you.
Fastball for a strike to John Christensen, who's batting in Hernandez's spot in the lineup. Christensen went in to play left field, and Pete moved from left to first base after the game got away from the Mets. Christensen was wearing number 35 until earlier this week when he gave it to Joe Sambito so Sambito could have his old number, which he wore in Houston. And Christensen donned number 7 and immediately got 3 straight hits. He had been 0 for his last 17 wearing number 35. And here's a wild pitch by Tibbs. Dykstra cruises down to second.
Well, one of the reasons, aside from the dear friendship, that Rusty Staub's on deck. Good. We'll see one of the premier pinch hitters, we think, in this ball game. But Rose wanted Cotton as pitching coach because he said there's never been a pitcher in history, in his words, who was that much of a versatile performer. Started as a power pitcher, a short reliever, a great fielder with a good move. Every phase of the game he excelled at one time or another. There's Jim Kitty. His son wants to get into broadcasting in his last year of school.
He observed us in a ball game last year in St. Louis and ought to strike from his mind whatever pointers he may have picked up. Christensen bounces it to short. Concepcion throws him out. Well, Jim Cott Jr. probably learned little from Bob Costas and Tony Kubek, but we wish him success with his broadcasting aspirations. Tibbs cruising in front. Okay, Charlie, and we'll be checking in with you following our baseball game today. Charlie will be without his usual broadcast partner, Lee Trevino, because Lee is playing in the Tournament of Champions this weekend on NBC.
What was Charlie's line? He said, I'm going to broadcast that in a very prejudicial fashion. I want to see the last putt made by Lee Trevino to win it all.
Cedeno fouls the curveball back.
See where Davey Johnson has got his stopper up in the bullpen now. They want to give him a little bit of work. Jesse Orozco, the last time he pitched was in that marathon game against Pittsburgh last Sunday. Came in with the bases loaded, nobody out. Didn't give him a run.
Curveball bounced up the middle. Backman won't have a play. It'll be scored as a base hit for Cedeno.
That was the game when Rusty Staub made the big catch, wasn't it? In the outfield. And
yeah.
It was also the game where Chuck Tanner brought all of his players into the infield. Second and third, nobody out and got out of it.
Let's pause here briefly for station identification on the NBC television network.
Aaron self-propelled model LM21S now on sale for $3.
Bob Costas back along with Tony Kubek. We're in the last of the 8th in Cincinnati. And there's the story, 14-2. The guy at the plate, part of the reason why, Nick Esasky, he had a grand slam in the middle of a 10-run Cincinnati 6th.
You saw that last swing. That's what, even with this score, Billy DeMars wants him to work on. Pitches away, breaking balls or fastballs. Try and go the opposite way. He is so strong. He's just trying to get him to make a little more contact. So you don't have to overswing. All you put your bat in the ball, it's going to fly. Another thing you like to have to do, lay off that pitch. Franco, the left-hander, now up.
Giraldi is already fan 4. His short stint. Nostalgia fans, we haven't forgotten. We still have one game to go as we chronicle that 1973 playoff series between the Reds and the Mets. We'll look back to Game 5 during the top of the 9th. Curveball runs the count full.
Little baseball etiquette. They will not start the runner 3-2. Unwritten agreement. Managers, players, even though he's not being held down, you're not going to embarrass the opposition. Remember, you do that to Maury Wills and say, look, if we tell you to stop hitting home runs and your power hitters, I'm going to steal if you give it to me. That's how I make my living. And they threw at Maury because of it a lot of times, but he never gave in and never quit.
And Giraldi gets Esasky looking for strikeout number 5.
He got a nice, easy delivery, and the ball just explodes. Look at his minor league record. He had a pretty good strikeout to base on balls ratio. Well, some hard throwers don't do as well. What's happened since Sparky Anderson left? Sparky left. It was one of the toughest decisions I know he had to make. Dick Wagner, who was the chief executive operator here, or officer, let Sparky go, made the change. Wagner still lives in town. He's a consultant. Talking about a guy who some felt was tough, and he was, but nobody was more honest. I mean tough as far as having to make a tough decision and take the heat for them.
Backman doubles over to Santana and then on to Heath. They turn a 4-6-3. So Schiraldi had a good stint. In 2 2/3, he struck out 5 and walked 1. Race tied 2 games apiece. Willie Mays, the legend, off the bench as a pinch hitter. He delivers an infield single, beating this one out. That came in the midst of a 4-run 5th inning. The base hit off Don Gullett, then a young Reds pitcher. Tom Seaver was the winner in Game 5. The Mets won it 7-2 and advanced to the World Series in 1973, where they held a 3-2 edge over the A's before succumbing in 7. Here's Staub to pinch hit. Swings at the first one and a chance for Oester. Rusty is gone. The pitcher was hitting in Carter's spots, so Strawberry is next.
Has he gotten a few pinch hits in his 21 seasons? More than anybody in the National League. Think about Rusty Staub and his pinch hits. He always seemed to drive in runs. Here's what happened in that marathon game against Pittsburgh when Davy Johnson, by his count, said he moved Staub from right to left 10 or 11 different times to try and have him avoid the ball being hit to him. He caught 2 fly balls that game.
Cedeno with a backhanded play. Tibbs covers, and now Tibbs is an out away from a complete game victory. The interesting thing, actually one of many interesting things in that marathon 18-inning game, as you said, Davy Johnson trying to hide Rusty Staub. Right field when a right-handed batter was up, left field with a left-handed hitter, flip-flopping. The hitter, when Staub made that great running catch, chugging toward the line, was Rick Roden, who was pinch hitting, I believe, for Doug Frobel. He was pinch hitting not for a pitcher, but for a regular player, and another pitcher, Tunnel, was on base. One of the bizarre circumstances. Heap is 1 for 3. This will be a 4-hitter for Tibbs if he can retire Heap here. He had a no-hitter through 5 2/3.
They had him on the ropes early. Backman and Hernandez walked. Then he popped Carter up and Strawberry fly to left field. Cincinnati, as they say, that mysterious word that pitchers and pitching coaches use. He got his rhythm and he got it all together and got in the groove.
Full count. What was it Ron Darling said after a recent complete game win? He said, yeah, I had good rhythm and all those other cliches.
Yeah. Mario Soto put a pitching staff together from the Dominican Republic. You got something, don't you? Andujar Alejandro Pena with the shoulder problems now.
Heap throws a 2-out walk. Let's go to Bill McAtee in New York for an update.
All right, Bob, in the 8th in Chicago, the Padres have cut the Cubs' lead to 1. Tony Gwynn with a single up the middle past Lee Smith into the outfield. Tim Flannery scores, and the Cubs' lead is now 9-8.
What a ball game at Wrigley. Now here's Howard Johnson. You know, at one time the Mets had a farmhand by the name of Ronald McDonald. No joke, he was a first baseman. Cedeno kicks it, recovers. Tibbs is there to record the final out. Tibbs is the winner. He's 1 4. McDowell the loser. He's 2 1. Carter had a homer for the Mets. Esasky a grand slam for the Reds. Let's go to Wrigley Field.
Grand slam home run by Nick Esasky, and they tumbled the Mets 14-2.